In this age of gender confusion, it's difficult to find advice you can trust to help protect your child from those who would seek to unduly influence them, setting them up to be manipulated and exploited. On Unmasking the Trans Movement, we discuss, educate, and deliver the info parents want.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. It's great to be back on this Sunday evening. A lot of people just signing in and getting on YouTube to join us live. You'll notice that our chat is up and running tonight, and you're more than welcome to join us on our chat if you have questions, or maybe you just want to throw a comment down, or maybe even make a comment to somebody else within the chat room. You're welcome to do that tonight. You probably have to log into YouTube and get all set up there first, and then from there you'll be able to sign into the chat and get things started. Today there's a lot more people out there that are speaking out against pornography on the grounds that it really isn't a very healthy industry. Now, the more they read the stories of the women and men in pornography, the conditions of their work and the use of drugs, the physical pain, the instances of shady behavior among porn producers, the manipulation, the sexual abuse both on and off camera, and the spread of STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, the more people are saying if porn is this abusive, I don't want to endorse it. Maybe they shouldn't participate in it either, but that's hearsay. Even the women consent to this lifestyle, that when they do consent, it's a lifestyle of abuse, and people are still saying, look, I don't care if she's consenting to being abused, but a woman who has forgotten her own dignity does not give me a green light or anyone else a green light to treat her as an object. With that, tonight's discussion is a tough one because we take away the human aspect of it and we bring up the animation world, a world filled with, again, I'm going to say more deviance. It takes a man into a place that is dark, and it's somewhere that is troubling, especially when you incorporate kids. And we talk about kids because a lot of the anime can be directed at kids from a variety of different ways. The colors that they use, the words that they use, the voices, the level of the look, the whole presentation of the porn itself. It is a deviant situation. We brought the experts together here tonight on your Sunday to get you the information that you need. Dr. Ann Gillies is with us as our special guest, and Charise Bates is here too, along with our man, John Euler. I'd love to call you doctor, and one day I just may be able to do that. But right now, you're a therapist, and you do a lot of work, and you deal with these kind of topics, these kind of patients, and really the deviance of it all, John. And you're a strong man for doing this, and I commend everything that you put together and do for not only us here at Unmasking the Trans Movement and our viewers, but just society in general. Your heart is in the right place, and I know that Dr. Ann's is, and I know mine is, and Charise's obviously is too, because she's here tonight to break this wide open. So let's jump into the program tonight. John, take it away.
Well, Brad, thank you as always. This is a labor of love. All of us here on the screen are volunteering our time. We happen to be recording live right now on a Sunday evening, so I'm appreciative of you, Brad, and Ann. Dr. Ann, you're busy as all get out as ever. You're always flying all over the place doing speaking and addressing these subjects, and so we're very appreciative to have Charise, because Ann, you and I are therapists. We're trauma therapists, worked with kids in the system, troubled youth, and one of the things that predators know is how to gain access to kids, and they will do so through animation. And if I'm like an average parent, I had never heard of the term anime. I didn't know what that was. Now I'm going to date myself. We're all getting a little older. Charise, you are not, but I remember first time I'd ever seen this kind of animation was, here it is, Speed Racer. It shows you how old I am, right? So you look at that style, and that was back in the 70s, I would imagine. It was different for those of us in the West. And then eventually we had Pokemon. We probably had a lot of different things in between then, but lo and behold, there has blossomed really an entire industry called anime. It originates out of the East, out of Japan, if I'm correct. We're going to let Charise give us the background. But Anne, I'm a therapist, you're a therapist. We have seen how predators will use anything, and they have used animation to gain access to kids. So, Anne, thank you again for being here and your thoughts before we turn it over to Charise for a good education.
Well, I think I'm going to get an education tonight. I haven't delved very far into anime. I have just looked at a couple things and thought, wow, this is so deviant. So, and not anime, not all of anime, perhaps, but what I was looking at and thinking, this is just, it's a way to entice the eye. That's my way I would put it, and that to me, it's a beginning when people are already perhaps involved in pornography, or maybe not. Maybe it's children, but what they're seeing is very provocative. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting an education tonight, Charise. So take it away.
As you can see behind me, I purposefully decorated the background here with a lot of references to anime and manga. This is especially meant for kids, technically. It's called Kirby. And there's really not supposed to be anything deviant about it. Other things, well, this is a very popular video game franchise, which is pretty good. And these, they're not meant to be deviant, but anyway, let's get on with the presentation. Let's see.
Well, Charise, as a matter of fact, let me have you do more of an introduction so people know how we connected. As far as collectively here, we had been doing various podcasts, broadcasts on the dangers of the trans movement, and you had reached out to us
Yeah, I
saying,
have.
"Hey, are you all familiar with anime?" And I've been a little bit, but you and I then connected to kind of get a backstory on you. You have a production background in this. You have an interest. You're an animator.
Yes, I haven't worked on sorry. I haven't worked on anything um, in anime specifically, but I have worked in animation industry in North America, technically. Mostly on very small films, short films, and artists stuff. But I'm
So
also,
you reached out to say, listen, I think you need to address this. Would you all be interested in having some background and educating parents? I said, by all means. So that's who you are. And if you want to give a little bit more about your background, how did you learn about anime? How did you and then you're going to tell us about manga. So it's not just anime, but it morphs into a different arena.
yes, and I'm going to explain more of that. I'm the type of generations where the parents were quite busy, and what they would often do is set their kids in front of the TV. Back then, we had tube TVs. These things were gigantic. They weren't just wide, but they also were just gigantic, heavy boxes they had to carry. Tube TVs, in other words. And we had programs back in the day like Sesame Street, which were very educational at the time. Now, not so much. But we also had VHSs, so anyone could record a movie onto a VHS and just keep playing it over and over. And so one of the things I often watched as a kid was animation, which is what my parents allowed me to watch. And there were a couple of decent anime at the time that I could see, actually. Because what they do in Japan is they don't just focus on stories like their own stories culturally and their history. They focus on everything outside. They've done quite a few adaptations of Grimm's fairy tales. They've also done, they seem to have an obsession with Alice in Wonderland as well. And the majority of those were kid friendly, actually. So I think my first introduction to anime was from there. Japanese adaptations of Grimm's fairy tales and Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, stories like that.
So you would say then that
And
it
it
was it
became,
started out you would say
as
then
a-
that it started out legit, yeah?
Pardon?
You would say that animation started out legitimate, like it was a legitimate practice. It was okay. It was fine. It had meaning. It had purpose. It was okay to do. But now it's been, what would you say, hijacked? Yeah.
Hijacked, yes, but you also have to understand that animation can be done in any country that has the technology. And different places in Europe have that technology for a while. Canada had it for a while. You could say that it started with photography. And have you ever seen that there used to be an argument among painters, like how to paint horses properly in motion? Because you would see these very old-timey paintings of horses with their front legs jutting out and their back legs jutting out, so they look like merry-go-round horses. And so painters would be arguing about that. And as soon as the camera came around, the painters were like, okay, we're going to line up all these cameras and we're going to have a horse running by so we can end this discussion of how to paint a horse in motion properly once and for all. And that's kind of the rumor of how you got the old footage of a horse running. And you could say that's how animation started. But then
I'm sorry. So you have a PowerPoint presentation that you want to bring up, and you want to walk us through it.
Yes. Since I mentioned that photography part, I hadn't deleted that, thank goodness. So I'm going to share. Okay, I did mention that photography part way back when. Can you see it?
We can see it.
Yep. 1816, the first camera was invented. This is unusual because we have a photo of a camera. Technically, you would need more than one camera to do this. You would need a camera to take a picture of the camera. Ah, yes. The argument about how to paint horses in motion properly. Ugh. So many older paintings looked very silly. And there it is. Old pictures of a horse in motion. And lots of painters were arguing, no, the horse has their legs up in the air at all times. Or the horse has only one leg on the ground at all times. But no, apparently the horse can have all the legs up in the air.
For a short period of time. I ride, and yeah, they aren't up in the air for very long.
But of course, these aren't drawings, these are photographs. But this eventually led to something called the zoetrope, or what's known as this other word, phonak. Can anyone see that word and pronounce it, Brett?
Yeah.
Phenakidoscope.
Oh gosh.
Phenakidoscope. Phenakistoscope.
Yeah. So have you seen those things before?
I have, but they've all been in horror movies.
Oh, that's just sad.
It wasn't a horror movie, and they were trying to scare the person. They put them, this was a therapist way of doing things back in the early days, and they'd put the person standing up within this tube chamber, and the images would be spinning around just like this in front of you, and it would, I guess, make the person relive their psychotic episodes and stuff. It was,
or have a new one.
13 Ghosts, I think, was the movie that I saw that in.
Wow.
Well, there were different things. They did have things like this where the horse would be running. They'd also have a person walking or a person on a bicycle. That's what all these zoetropes are for.
They had scary ones in the horror movie that I watched. Really freaky.
Well, they weren't meant to be scary to start with. Now, this is rumored to be one of the first real animations that was made. So from 1816, almost 16 years later, we're starting to do some real animation with hand drawings.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then Japan, well, they actually found some animation dating all the way back to 1907 to 1912.
Oh.
Now, why would anybody be interested in other countries about this? Well, we ended up sharing the technology of the camera with other places, didn't we? Like almost everybody knew what the camera was and what they could do with it. So this is just a snippet of possibly the first animation ever done in Japan. Let's see. Oh, that is stuff that I was going to have in my presentation earlier, but then I just let it go because that's just adding too much to it. Okay, so what is anime and manga? Manga and anime are two different media. Manga is a style of Japanese comic books or graphic novels, typically aimed at adults, but it's also aimed at children. And they actually make stuff that's decent enough for children. But considering Japan's a different culture, well, you know, things can be slightly different. Now, anime, it's a style of Japanese film, television, and streaming animation, typically aimed at adults as well as kids. So they're two different media. Let me see. So here you have a panel from a comic, the manga, and this is a screenshot of an anime. So what it looks like is you would have the comic book first, and then you would have the animation done second. Now this is done so frequently that you just automatically assume that someone has to make the comic book first and then the animation. And that's how business is done in Japan. Let's see. Oh, but this is not necessarily true. I'll just go back to this nicer one here. And some people compare this to what's happening in the USA. Like you have the comic, then you have an animation adaptation of it or a live action film of it. It's different in Japan. Like here, there are two big businesses, DC and Marvel. They do their own comics, they have their own characters, and they hire people to make stories for those characters, etc., etc. But in Japan, it's different. What they have are publishing companies for publishing manga or comic books, and they'll have anybody come in with an idea that is an artist and a writer, or maybe it's one artist and a writer, and they're working together. They'll come in and say, we have this great idea for a comic book, can you publish this for us? The publishing company in Japan is only interested in how much money that they're going to make out of your idea. And they don't care like what kind of idea it is, how nice it is for kids or how deviant it is. They just want to know about money. And they don't also care if the person coming in is a man or a woman. They just want to know about the idea. So you have quite a few women in manga. There's actually a lot of them who are good artists and writers. Now, anime, on the other hand, not every comic book actually becomes an anime. Let's see. Most of the anime is adapted from manga to tell the manga stories. It's like a retelling. Other times, anime is used for other products, like a Vocaloid, a singing voice synthesizer software allowing users to synthesize singing voices by inputting lyrics and melodies. The software uses voice samples from real singers or voice actors to create the synthesized vocals. So let's say, John, that you were a very good singer and you're a tenor.
This is fiction.
Well, let's just say that it was real, that you're a great tenor. And if you sing, you can use a Vocaloid to make yourself sound more like the type of Japanese voice actor who makes the tough sounding voices for male characters. Big tough characters like this guy right here. Or you can make the Vocaloid make you sound like one of these anime girls right here instead.
So a 10-year-old girl.
Yeah. It could change the sound of your voice. So other than adaptations from comic books, the anime can be used for this, sort of like a karaoke altering your voice. Now, there was an animation character used as a mascot for a streaming service called Crunchyroll. This was used as a opportunity for the company, so there wasn't actually a show made of this character. She was just a mascot. But Crunchyroll also competed with Funimation, and it was another streaming service that streamed anime as well. Eventually, Sony bought the company Crunchyroll and integrated the company with Funimation. The integration included everything from Funimation was then moved to Crunchyroll. The company name Funimation is no longer there, and now they just use the company name Crunchyroll. So these were both streaming services at the time where they would show you anime. And they would show it in its original Japanese language with subtitles or dubbed. And sometimes it started out as a video game. So this particular character was originally from a video game in the 1990s. The character is still popular even today. And here we have the difference in technology showing a slight difference in how the character looked, especially if you're going 3D. But then they made an anime of it later, and it was to capitalize on how successful the video game was. Let's see. Other than those adaptations, sometimes the animation production companies in Japan, what they'll do is they'll find novels not graphic novels, just regular novels. And they'll do adaptations from there. They also have something in Japan called light novels, which apparently don't count as a comic. It's a novel characterized by a relatively short story, very short length, and it has some illustrations. And the creators of anime just want to tell a particular story. They don't really need any comic book reference or anything inspiring that. They just want to tell a good story and use a particular visual style. And yeah, like I said before, they will use anything outside of their own culture to make an anime out of. Have you ever heard of The Matrix? Yeah, that particular movie franchise. Apparently, there's something called an animatrix, which is just anime and Matrix. And what that is it's expanding the story like the world of the Matrix. So you're getting more horror stories of AI robots taking over the world, like even origin stories about possibly how this happened within this particular story. There's even an anime Batman. There's also anime Jack and the Beanstalk, which actually has some very good music. And like I said, the Brothers Grimm, Charles Perrault, actually I'm not pronouncing that right because it's French, Lewis Carroll, L. Frank Baum. And just for fun, can you tell what story this is?
That's Jack and the Beanstalk. It's the Golden Goose.
It's not Jack and the Beanstalk. There is a separate story called The Golden Goose.
Oh, is it? Okay. Golden Goose lays golden eggs, right?
This particular goose is a different kind of story because this guy right here, he's the lucky guy that found it and everything's fine and he's going to take the goose home, etc., etc. But as he's going home, lots of people in the village are staring like, wow, that guy has a goose made of gold. Let's take the goose's feathers and sell them or something. So they wait until this guy is distracted. And then some of the villagers try to take the goose away. Unfortunately, their hands stick to the goose. And so they can't let go. And so other people try to help out those thieves that are attached to the goose. And unfortunately, the people trying to help end up getting stuck to the people that they're trying to help out. So you have people getting stuck to this golden goose and it's just terrible. This guy doesn't get stuck, but he's thinking, okay, how to fix this problem? It is a happy ending after all. Eventually they all come unstuck. And that is a weird, grim fairy tale, yeah. Now, if you want to get back to the culture. Oh, okay. Otherwise, Japanese animation and comics are influenced by Japanese own history and culture, including Japan's history of prostitution. Now, this may get a little graphic in terms of language. Some female prostitutes did more than just have sex with their customers. They were expected to be skilled entertainers. They had to be singers, dancers, write calligraphy, poetry. They had to play musical instruments. They had to be actors. They also did some puppet shows. Female prostitutes frequented places like the coast, where many ships and people would be. Some female prostitutes had their own little boats where they would sing from and attract customers. They also ran hotels and restaurants. There was also shrine maidens that become prostitutes, but not every shrine maiden became a prostitute. Otherwise, there'd be female prostitutes frequenting temples and shrines where people would worship. Have you ever heard of kabuki theater? That is a big part of Japanese culture. Kabuki theater was invented by women, and it was to entertain the commoners for a long time until the rich people started getting interested. And then eventually kabuki theater was made for snobs only. But that took some time. This meant that it was just all the actors were female, so they were all actresses. And this meant they had to dress and drag to play male characters. Now, some kabuki actors were prostitutes. Now, there were female prostitutes outside of kabuki theater who did dress and drag anyway, and this was used to catch attention as well. Let's see. The government made attempts to regulate prostitution rather than ban it. This created brothels. Now, there are many rules at brothels, and all these rules were made to extract as much money as possible from the customers. They weren't necessarily for the protection of the prostitutes. Let's see. Female prostitutes were often young women, but then some women would lose their husbands and they would become prostitutes as well. Despite being old, they were popular and still made money. Now, in kabuki theater, eventually every woman who was in kabuki theater was replaced by a man, assuming this would take care of the immorality of prostitution. It did not. The prostitutes in kabuki theater were eventually young men who played female characters. So in that kind of so in prostitution, you would have women dress up as men, but you'd also have men dressed up as women. Many tea houses were actually fronts for male brothels only. So male prostitutes were expected to be as entertaining as the female prostitutes. The male prostitutes, they had to sing, they had to dance, they had to do calligraphy, they had to do poetry, play musical instruments, acting, puppet shows, even juggling. They also had to drink all the way through the night, almost competing with the customers. They also made shadow puppets. Male prostitutes were usually very young boys. They could dress and drag and pretend to be women, or they could just dress like men. The customers were anyone who could afford them. It didn't matter what class the customer was, whether they be rich, poor, or a monk. That's a little surprising, isn't it? That a monk would go to a brothel?
I've just done a series on the Catholic Church, so not necessarily. Charise, this is very interesting. I'm starting to see, okay, here's where the cross-dressing comes in, or the effeminate male. In the interest of time, just a little bit, can we kind of jump forward to you describing, okay, how has anime entered into the popular culture so that parents can, but this is very, very helpful because when you see the animation, a lot of the males have very soft features, as it were, almost androgynous sometimes. So this gives it a lot of good background.
Let's see. I'll skip ahead a bit. Let's see. We don't need to bother with
You're going to have to do a college course on this. There's a lot of good background.
It's very interesting.
Okay, this is excellent. Yes,
so
as a matter of fact, educate us on transmaxing, if you would, because
Yes.
we recently broached that subject.
So we're really just getting into where the deviance starts. This is where in Japan, in the theaters, this all started to transpire and transition, and this deviance now gets taken to another level as we've progressed, right?
But this was part of their culture, though.
It was, eh?
It's their business, technically. And
So even the use of young boys.
Man-on-man sex was predominant there, or became predominant?
The only reason for that was because it was to avoid pregnancy.
Right, and that's exactly it. Yeah.
So you're using children. Like on what planet do you use children?
Yeah.
You know,
The only excuse, if you want to call it that, is because people tend to die sooner than they did now. So this was way back when in a different culture. Yes, I keep saying that. And it was to avoid pregnancy that would happen because a majority of the customers were men.
Are we talking like 16th, 17th century stuff, or are we talking like 18, 1900s?
1900s, I think.
Further back than that, actually.
Yeah. And Charise, what also happens when men become sexually deviant, when they objectify, then there's a tendency, what you're going to tend to find is they shift, strangely enough. They'll certainly use women and girls, but then they shift to boys.
Yeah.
And then they will be objectifying. And then it really, the most deviant of all men focus primarily just on boys. It's a very, right, when you, in the sex offender treatment realm, when you have guys that are the most deviant, you'll see that almost predominantly their victims are young boys. So I think it speaks to then any culture, if it shifts and it's using young boys. I'm not saying it minimizing the harm on young girls, but by the time it's the most deviant, men are using for sexual gratification young boys.
I don't think anyone around that time is alive anymore because this was something that would happen around the year 700.
That's right.
Yeah, or 800. Yeah, so this is pretty old.
But there's still child abuse, and even
Back then, yes.
even back then, you know, looking back, people recognized the abuse of children in one form or another. I mean, children were mutilated, and often had arms amputated so that they could beg on the street. There was a lot of child abuse, but it doesn't mean it was necessarily condoned by the whole of society. Anyways, you need to go back to what you were doing because it was very interesting.
That's a perfect
Transmax.
segue into kind of the transmaxing and what
Yeah.
we're seeing, like with WPATH, where you had a significant influence of those that are into castration fantasies, meaning they want to castrate young boys, sometimes themselves, but it was oftentimes they're going to inflict it on others, and then you feminize these boys, and now it's called sissification. So
I just want to mention, though, it doesn't seem to matter what culture you're talking about, because poverty is the one thing that will send you down the path of prostitution. It's usually poverty. So
actually, let me qualify just for a moment, and hopefully this will be helpful, Charise. What you'll also find is, regardless of socioeconomic status, men who get into deviance, and sometimes the lifestyles of the rich and famous when they have too much time on their hands.
Yes.
Look at what happens in Hollywood. So Sam Smith is this dark, deviant individual. It's not because of poverty. Look at Epstein. So it's very strange.
Well, that's when you become a customer, though. Like if you were to be the prostitute in question, it's usually poverty that will lead to the act.
There you go. That drives those, makes them vulnerable.
right.
That's
Yeah.
right. The victims, absolutely.
I'm not sure if you could see what I was trying to do there, trying to get to the document in question, the transmaxing. Did you?
You may want to go back to share your screen there.
Share screen.
So we'll have to have you back. We'll have to do a course on anime. There's so much, obviously, that you need to be able to share with us. And I had never heard of a lot of this. The
So this is-
transmax. So there we go. So
Yeah.
parents and adults, get ready for this. I had never heard of this term, but all the deviants do. Trust me. LGBTQ perps that are pushing stuff on kids. This is what the male AGPs. This is what they're all about, doing to kids. That's why they want to have access to kids.
This isn't necessarily two kids. This is let's see. This is one man talking to another man who's just like himself. So let's see. We're just should I explain what's on this first page?
Sure. Go ahead and because this falls under the rubric of sissification.
Sissification and what's called incel or inceldom. Have you heard of that?
Well, go ahead and give the audience an education.
So incel is a term technically used for men. Basically, these are men who they're very nervous when talking to girls. Let's see, actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I have that. Actually, my PowerPoint presentation. Oh. Go back to share. I'm going to share that. All right. Incel. Involuntary plus celibacy. A member of an online community of young men assumed to be all heterosexual, who believe themselves unable to attract women as romantic and sexual partners despite desiring one. They often blame, objectify, and degrade women and girls, but they also hate men who are sexually active too. Now, I have heard the term trying to be changed to femcel, which is supposed to be a female version of that. However, I'm kind of skeptical as to the definition being the exact same. I don't think it should be. But anyway, aside from that, we are going back to this document. So this is about an incel talking to another incel. And so it's saying how you can have a better sex life by transitioning. That's basically this whole document. There are many potential benefits from transitioning from male to female. Oh, and for some reason they start with 0. Sexual excitement from having a feminine body, and the superiority of female aesthetics. Access to the transbian dating pool. Transbian is actually just a word for a man who's addicted to lesbian porn, so much so that he thinks he's a lesbian. And so
And this would fit it. You can see the term AGP, autogonophile, which is really a cross-dressing deviant guy, quite frankly. But so once they start to go down that path, this becomes appealing to them, and male perps are going to try to feminize these guys through this means.
Yeah, transbian dating pool, which means you can date other men like yourself if you happen to be a guy who thinks he's a lesbian, a gay woman, which was ridiculous. Full body orgasms, I have no idea what they're talking about. Multiple orgasms from penile stimulation, I'm guessing it's because they don't do any of the sex reassignment surgeries. They actually keep their gear intact.
That's right.
You will feel emotions stronger and be happier on estrogen. Your breasts will become sensitive. You're being able to attract cis lesbians, which means actual homosexual women. I don't think they'd be that they would not be attractive to. Okay, what I'm trying to say
Well, it
is
shows you how warped this is, right? We're trying
That's
to
very
make sense of any of this.
they just assume that they're going to attract gay women to them because of this. It's ridiculous. Higher quality males will be attracted to you. Oh, so they want to manipulate other men who are not necessarily transitioning. They are full-on heterosexual, etc., etc. High volume men, whatever. Softer skin and less acne. Live longer.
really.
Yeah.
I'm afraid the science would not pull that off.
Right, given the lifestyle, that's right. The life expectancy drops.
But you're supposed to trust the science. Shush. Okay.
Right.
Being able to extract resources from men. Further manipulation. You will no longer be driven to do dangerous and idiotic things due to testosterone. But you do dangerous and idiotic things when you transition anyway.
As a matter of fact, sorry. Speaking of the science, look at number 3 and 4. Okay,
Yeah.
that is fiction, right? Nobody questions what is a full body orgasm. The only time you see that is somebody's being electrocuted. Okay, number 1. So what is, how do we define what is this full body as opposed to half a body orgasm? And then look at number 4. And any guy that the way the male physiology works, a guy cannot, unless he's become deviant and very dark, one could say also potentially almost demon possessed, you cannot have multiple orgasms. You can't do that. Every normal couple, every normal relationship understands that after climax for the guy, he will become flaccid and he will go to sleep. That's why women get frustrated. But, okay, it takes a time of recuperation. The body has to rebuild the semen.
But you're not getting it, John. You're not getting it, John, because these are transmaxing, so they're full of estrogen.
Right? That's right. So it must do it.
So they can have multiple.
Well, okay, so now I got to jump in as a dad who's done a little bit of research in terms of some of this, and I didn't want to come on the program and be totally dumb, but one thing I did find out, and people talk about this quite regularly, is men having a prostate orgasm. So what's up with that?
Do you really want to know how that works?
I don't really want to know how it works, but we're talking about multiple orgasms for a male, and I'm thinking that the orgasm that we're really discussing, while they say penile, I believe that we're talking about anal orgasm through the prostate. And I think that that's where, am I on the right track there, Charise? You might know better.
Here's the thing you have to understand with this document. It's telling other men about, well, the men who share this kind of thing amongst themselves, they all have the same twisted, stereotypical ideas of what they think womanhood is. They think that women have full body orgasms. They think that women have the better sex, and they idolize women to such an extent, but they also denigrate women.
You know, we've seen that before on the program with trans widows who have had to go through some of the roles that you're talking about and facilitate that to their men, and then obviously the relationship went south after that. But these women have been coerced by therapists and individuals to get them to participate with these deviant men to take on this role and do this to them.
If the woman can't do that role, then the man's happy to pretend to be the woman he'd rather be having sex with.
There you go.
That's the point of this document.
It's so twisted. Let's just put it out there. This is so inverted and twisted.
I'm not sure the average person could even begin to grasp this. Really, I mean, I'm looking at, since women have the upper hand on dating market, transitioning from male to female will usually improve your options. when it comes to getting sex. Like, I mean,
That's the document.
yeah, very, very.
What upper hand am I supposed to have in the dating market? Like, even if I was a 10 out of 10, am I actually going to get the man I want? I don't think so.
Yeah, but their minds are, it's what they believe, right?
And
About
this is all about what they believe. If you're
exactly.
a woman. Yeah.
That's
As a
very
matter of fact, look at number 12. You'll no longer be driven to do dangerous and idiotic things due to testosterone. No, now you're being driven to do dangerous and idiotic things because of deviance. These guys are saturated in pornography that has morphed into extremely deviant stuff. By the time a guy's doing this, he's also accessing bestiality porn. He's into really dark and deviant stuff. So it shows you this is very cult-like communication, and those that are being
And it all
recruited are
happens
sucked in.
online. Yeah.
Right? They're
Oh,
being
yeah.
sucked into this. This only works for those that are naive. So this is written by those that are going to be grooming the younger, naive ones, or a bunch of twisted guys getting together. But if a guy's twisted, he's probably not going to be reading the Transmaxing Manifesto. So this is a document that's used to get in front of younger teen boys that is starting to script their minds that, oh, this must be a good thing. I can, have multiple orgasms. How? Well, I have some guy penetrate my anus, and apparently that's going to be exciting. But why do most men avoid the proctologist?
But you've got to read
It's
it.
not pleasurable.
Read the very last last paragraph, just last part of it. If you do not have autogynephilia, as an incel, you can try and induce it. My goodness. You can watch porn and imagine yourself as a female. There's also a female POV. I don't know what that is. Porn you can try.
Hold on, which page are you reading from?
I'm sorry?
Which page are you reading from in the document?
I'm right at the bottom here.
At the bottom.
Yeah, the last paragraph.
Okay.
So, autogynephilia is a form of disorder, sexual disorder.
And
here we are, like, let's try and induce it. I mean, they've already got enough issues going on. Honestly, this is just crazy making for people, really. Yeah, it's very sad.
You know what POV means?
No.
The point of view?
Point of view, yes.
Oh, okay.
So when they say female point of view, like the camera is positioned so that it's around the man in question, and the man is acting like he is penetrating or what have you on the woman in question.
Yeah.
When it's just making motions toward the camera. Oh, here it says, many AFAB individuals who transition to male regret it due to social implications. Do you know what AFAB means?
No, I don't.
It means assigned female
at birth. Yeah. Okay.
So you're not allowed to say it's a girl or it's a boy. You have to say
that's right.
Or
I
assigned.
didn't know there was an acronym for that. Should have known.
They use a lot of acronyms.
Oh yes.
Well, Charise, gosh, we need many, many hours for this. So I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is going to be, again, really adding context to how does anime then? So we have these guys that have been feminized. This is the sissification. You have terms called forced sissification. And then, of course, WPATH, World Professional Association of Transgender Health, was being influenced by deviants that were a part of the into castration fantasies. And so this all fits into sexualizing minors, but especially boys now in this case. So help us, pardon the pun, transition back to anime. So you've got kids, you've got young males that have now become susceptible, it's not just young males, to really predators getting material in front of them for the grooming process. So take us back to where now anime fits into this world that's becoming deviant for these young people, and how predators can start to use this animation.
That's on page 2, actually, of the document.
Okay.
How to transition. And it lists on this page 16 different anime that you can watch that have the same thing. And boys of a certain mindset are supposed to watch these anime and use these to think, Yes, that they are becoming girls now.
So
Which
they're
is
being
incredible.
groomed. These are tips on how to groom, have the kids want to go and watch this, and now they're being influenced or groomed.
It's incredibly stupid because this is not what anime is for. Anime is used to entertain, it's used to create art, it's used to tell stories, and it's used to create money. That's all it's for.
And that's where it
And
gets
so,
high.
It's creating money now.
That's where it got hijacked. Right there.
That was the original. The original. Now we get into what has happened. It's been, kind of, it's been twisted, right? So that's what happens when the wrong people get a hold of it.
yeah, so how to transition. If you do not currently feel like living as a female, you might have to work on fixing that. Identifying as a male or being emotionally attached to a male body is bad for you. Really? It's bad for you. If being male results in you living a bad life. Okay, so begin voice training. So you need a female voice. Watch this anime, this one, and this one. Interesting how it gives the titles here, but for this one it gives the title and a specific episode. Episode 3. I wonder why.
Well, so a parent walks by, let's say I have a son, or anybody has a son, and they're watching what we think are cartoons, but we don't know that they may have been directed by somebody. So the kid's being groomed. Parents don't know it. Parents are happy because it seems like their child is now being able to be by themselves, quiet. The house is quiet. Parents are able to fix dinner. But meanwhile, the kid's being groomed in the other room.
And then there's watch this anime as well. Also play video games with a female character in them. Go to a gender clinic if you need an official diagnosis. Bank your sperm, assuming that you are going to have sex reassignment surgery.
Okay, look at step 9, by the way. What have we just told a boy to do, a young teen to do?
Bank your sperm. Make
How
sure
do you do that?
I think the only way to do that is to
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm already telling a kid to get into some kind of material that's going to cause them to start masturbating.
Now start hormone replacement therapy. Start hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. That's the acronym. Removal of unwanted hair, except for what's on the head. Facial feminization surgery. Yeah, like shaving down the jaw, something like that. Social transition can be done earlier if you live in a social environment supportive of it.
Like Canada.
Unfortunately, yes. And then there's this paragraph which teaches you more anime to watch. Now, if you have a strong stomach, I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to see if this is at the right place now. Okay.
Charise, this is why it's perfect for predators, because predators can be suggesting this kind of stuff, and the kid doesn't know that the anime is doing the grooming for them. They're getting addicted to this, they're getting further in, and meanwhile the predator is sort of hands up, just gently guiding them. But meanwhile the kid's becoming more and more susceptible to that growing relationship.
Yes.
Well, and there's something else there too that I read on the first line, that being male creates a bad life for you. Like, I'm like, okay, people who being male or being female really isn't the issue. It's your behavior that's the issue, right? So we eliminate responsibility for whatever is bad in their life, their mother yells at them, or we do all that. So eliminating personal responsibility, it's crazy. Yeah.
I'm just gonna, I hope you have a strong stomach, because I'm gonna show you what kind of anime that they're telling these.
Okay, viewer discretion
Gotta
advised,
warn
but
the
this is what your
viewers.
kids are
Yes,
getting at
it's
school,
not nice.
right? This is part of the Soji sex ed stuff.
Not necessarily at school, but mostly online. Yeah. So
For instance, you could hand this out in class during Soji sex ed and nobody would even bat an eye.
I hope that's not what they're doing, because that's just gross.
They'll
Okay,
be able to do that.
This male protagonist right here, he was born and somewhat delinquent student. And then you have, and I think it's this one, who happens to be an exceptional student. After a fall causes them to accidentally kiss, they discover they can swap bodies. They learn that there are 6 other witches at their school, each with a unique activated by a kiss. So this is a boy and a girl character swapping bodies by some supernatural means.
Right, you're introducing witchcraft and of course satanic stuff when you start into that. Wow.
I'm not sure this is all satanic stuff like this particular anime. I think this is just
It's a beginning though. What you see is this kind of easing into, it's an easing into witchcraft, right? So, and witchcraft
really.
then comes, yeah.
This
And
really isn't about witchcraft. It's just using it as a front to say this is a sexy story we're telling.
Yeah,
And
but Charise, that would be a very subtle way. So, for instance, if I'm a kid and I hear the term, what are the witch? So I've got a blonde witch. So now it's dumbing down this child's discernment. What is witchcraft? What is, oh, there must be white and black magic. So it's really introducing the occult. So magic and
body swapping. I mean, all of that is very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah, but this is Japanese animation we're talking about, a different culture. So they'll
Yeah,
use
but hold on now, because this is where it gets really political, and this is where we start to start thinking about things like the East impeding on the West, impeding on certain values and factors that they've been struggled with throughout their course of their history, and again, a conventionalism of communism. And we're seeing that happen, a reduction in population, a chance to change our future by, you know, having boy on boy and girl on girl sexual time instead of heterosexual time to again stop procreating. And that is where I think this is the infiltration, whether Dr. Ann says a deviance of witchcraft, a deviance of a satanic message or cult-like aspect. We talk about this all the time on the program, and there is a cult-like aspect. There is a deviance that falls within the realm of the satanic and the witchcraft world. And, you know, John and Ann are right in the sense of this being a stepping stone to go deeper and be accepting as you move farther forward. And I think that that's really what we're talking about here, is that these two girls kiss, change bodies. One now becomes from a boy to a girl, and that whole transition happens. And it happens with that hat on. And there might not be any relationship to saying the word witch. It might not say anything about 666 or the devil or Satan or Beelzebub or any of that. But the reality is that's the image that your kids are seeing, and that's where it gets deviant. And the West is being bombarded by the East with pornography. Now, look, we've been to Pornhub. We've seen what's happening on Pornhub, and that's just one of the major issues. Pornhub is owned and ran by MindGeek. MindGeek puts out everybody's porn around the world. When you go online, you're going to see, first and foremost, anime. Why is it anime that's popping up first and foremost? Because it's the one thing that's getting into our kids. And our parents that are seeing it are just scrolling by it, looking for their normal heterosexual stuff, but that's not their viewer. Their viewer is the kids. And that's where this shit starts to dictate to them, starts to groom them, and starts to become a deviant factor that turns it to another realm altogether. And I agree with Dr. Ann and John on that particular issue. Sorry to say all that.
Well, no, and Shri, just, you know, it's very interesting to have you say, because I completely understand why, as even look at the last sentence here, then they learned that there are 6 other witches. So all I'm saying is this, that I think we've become so dumbed down that we don't know that the word witch is right out of the occult, because what does a witch tap into? The spiritual realm.
Yes.
So this has become very normalized. Harry Potter normalized it. And so it's almost that we're not shocked. And so when somebody then comes up with saying, you know what, this is within the realm of spirituality.
Even a parent walking by thinks it's Harry Potter and doesn't realize that they're going to be watching porn in about 5 seconds.
just about. So anyways, just so you know, Charise, the idea of witches comes out of the occult. So what it's done is it's cracked open a door, and what's part and parcel, because we see a merging of the trans flag and the pentagram. The Church of Satan is doing
Image of the goat.
school after school activities. One of the premises, and Aleister Crowley, who was a little more far advanced, one of the premises is do what thou wilt. It's the whole of the law. And
Well,
so
that wasn't the premise. That was his commandment, his one and only commandment.
that's right. So what it's really doing is saying that you can be the arbiter of, in a way, moral law. So if it feels good, you can do it, quote unquote, as long as you're not impacting someone. So it really allows for self and self almost deification, that I become the one that's going to determine right and wrong in my own life. So anyway, let's keep going.
We're getting kind of deep here, guys. Let's.
My issue.
Very interesting, though. One thing I was looking though, thinking about the supernatural and thinking about body swapping. Now I know it's meant differently here, male to female, probably, but body swapping, I haven't studied that, so don't.
Body swapping is something that often happens in storytelling. So you could have a bad guy and a good guy swapping bodies. So the bad guy all of a sudden acts like a good guy. Good guy suddenly starts acting like the bad guy because their personality switched.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of meaning to that. Anyways, you go ahead because it's been very interesting so far.
One more little question here I got is, what's the difference between hentai and what we're talking about?
Hentai is a genre, a specific genre that is just pornographic, actually.
Okay.
That is pornographic. Hentai is pornographic manga and anime specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charise, I hate to ask you, could you find in advance, or could you advance the slides? Could you show parents, because I'm aware of the time, we're going to have you back, part two, because there's a lot to this. Could you show some of the concerning kinds of animation that parents should be mindful of? How it starts like this, but eventually it progresses, and before you know it, a young person is accessing animation that does not look like these little high school students.
Exactly. These look like I was going to say, late elementary or early high school, but not the anime that I've kind of seen.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go through all these slides because all of these are the anime referenced in the Transmaxing document. So
okay, there we go.
Hang on.
Yep.
It's going to get a bit grody. So same idea. A boy turns into a girl by either supernatural reasons or science fiction reasons, or just going to sleep one day then waking up again. There's another. This is one where he's actually trapped in the body with her, so they have to share the body together.
Wow.
And this is where the boy literally transforms into a girl. There's no body swapping here.
And look at how short the skirts are getting and how young the kids are starting to look.
How suggestive, right? To children and teenagers. Wakes up to find himself transitioned. Oh, could that happen to me? And especially a child.
That's right. And what you're going to find with this stuff is you look at the face, and the face will tend to start looking like a younger and younger child, yet the body can still be developed as an adult.
Fully developed, yes.
And that's where you get into, this is what predators will start to use.
Yes.
They love to defile innocence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can actually draw anything like that. Okay, so if anyone's brave enough, let's ignore this character because they're actually not a protagonist in the story. Let's focus on these three. And are any of you brave enough to say whether or not this is a woman or a man?
I'm never afraid. I've given up being afraid. So which one were you pointing to? That one? That's definitely a girl trying to be a boy.
Okay, girl trying. You think it's a girl?
I think it's a girl trying to be a boy.
How about this one?
That looks like a guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this one?
Yeah, girl.
Yep.
That was a trick question. I am sorry. These are all men.
Isn't that something? Okay.
But because of how they're drawn, they look very feminine, especially this one. This one is an archaic sort of stereotype, an archaic archetype of a character where we assume that angels are both boy and girl. But this character is mostly a boy. He's just drawn very feminine looking. Yeah.
Well, not just feminine. That is the drawing of a little girl. I mean,
Hmm.
as those of us that have had daughters, and we don't even have to have a daughter, that's a little girl with a nightgown or some sort of dress. You can see the cleavage right there. So again, we already have a very young face, but overdeveloped features. So whatever the author is trying to do, that is clearly a little girl.
By appearance, yes, but in the story itself,
Yeah.
That's why.
it's
And that's what
all
matters.
always
Wow.
That's
referred
what
to as a
matters.
he, et cetera, et cetera. I'm
Right.
going to skip the description of this. I just want you to remember that I pointed out the title of this series was mentioned as well as the episode. I wonder why it's that specific episode. It's because these characters are given a potion to transform them into girls. And that's it. That's okay. Move to the next one.
Magic potion, witchcraft.
Oops. Okay, skip that one. Ah! Okay.
That's important for people. We unfortunately we have to see it, but parents and all good people, this is what your teens are being, and even younger kids being directed towards.
Yeah.
Hmm. And the worst part about all these anime, it's that these are boys are being told that if they watch these, they will become girls. Like, you can't expect every boy to be that gullible, and I hope not.
Well, you also certainly have introduced pornographic images to a
Yes.
boy with that.
This one is less pornographic, but it's the same thing. A girl and a boy switch bodies by whatever means. It's never explained. A lot of times it's never explained. Oh, this is where we get into the video game aspect of this. So apparently this character, he made a nice character for himself in a video game in the story. And it's some old bearded sorcerer dude who's probably good with a sword, et cetera, in the video game. And then, whoops, the protagonist of the story wakes up in the video game, but not as the character he designed. He's a little girl sword fighter. So while he's stuck in the game, he's got to figure out how to get himself out of it. Oh, here's another weird one. For whatever reason, oh yeah. In Japan, they also believe in the concept of reincarnation, but I'm kind of wondering if reincarnation was part of the inspiration for the story. So, a ruthless, atheistic Japanese salaryman is reincarnated, yeah, as a young girl named Tanya in an alternative, war-torn, magic-infused version of World War I Europe. So, yeah. So, apparently reincarnation was used to turn this man into a girl.
Very interesting. So there you have a religious ideology, a religious belief combined with transitioning. So
And it says, being acts as self-proclaimed God, sends him
Yeah.
to this world with the ultimatum that he must either die a natural death or find faith or face eternal damnation. Oh my gosh, and on top of everything, the poor kid's stressed.
You know,
If you
you know
lose,
what?
you
Hey,
go to
this-
hell. Well, okay. Oh my
This is an
what I
goodness.
was-
adult. This is an adult, though. It's the mind of an adult trapped in a child's body.
This is just, the kid's going to be warped and traumatized from this.
But I was just thinking though, John and Brad, we as children and young teens never had to deal with this kind or this level
Never.
of lies,
Entertainment.
of confusion. Children are just being incredibly indoctrinated. That's an overused word perhaps, but this is the same kind of thing. And children with a very active imagination are going to begin to believe they can be a self-proclaimed God. They can be the opposite sex and all of these
Hey,
other things.
Dr. Ann, let me just interrupt because I think this is something that you'll agree with and jump right on with, and you'll take it from here. But I'm just going to mention one word: spectrum.
Oh yeah.
If you're on the
Oh.
spectrum, they're coming after you. That's what this is all about, right
Most
there. That's
vulnerable
exactly who
children.
they're after.
Yep. Vulnerable children. Any child with mental health diagnoses, but particularly those with autism or on the autistic spectrum. Absolutely. Oh my! Just makes
And
me.
once you get a kid into this anyways, regardless of themes, but this is very dark and deviant themes, it gets into spirituality. The question is this: how are you ever going to unplug a kid whose brain now is so wired for all this, and that's really online gaming anyways, and get them to be able to unplug and then think deeply about everything from math to then get them out of nature. How about you tell one of these kids, you know what? Okay, turn the computer off, go play. You've got a zombie on your hands. It's like, so their creativity is, at the very least, it's being negatively impacted because of how many hours.
Oh,
Then you add the content. Now it's very dangerous.
I think you'd have to explain to them how it's made, because it's very important that they understand this isn't magic that they're dealing with. Like, animation isn't just there, people make it. And it's up to them, like, what the story is. So they have to understand how much control there is to make these things, like comics and animation. Like, if they can do that, then whatever magic, especially the kind of magic that Disney tried to put out one time. Oh no, I said Disney. Okay. Like, they
Oh, they've
tried to
gone
make
bad.
it.
They've gone dark, right? They've gone dark.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Disney company tried to sell their stuff in such a way where the voice actor for Snow White, their very first production, she wasn't allowed to get any other job outside of Disney. She wasn't allowed to do opera or theater or nothing. And that's what Walter Elias Disney had told her. The reason why he told her that is so all his work looked like it was magic. And it was fantastic and everything.
I've
So
been a
you weren't allowed
voice.
to
I've been a voice actor for over 35 years, Charise, and I've been in the industry, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I've had the opportunity, and I guess the options of working for people just like this that we're discussing that make these animes. And I've turned them down, obviously, every single time because it's not my shtick. I'm not interested in trying to talk like a 10-year-old or anything else. And the deviance of it all is just overwhelming. And I don't think I'd come out of it with anything other than PTSD. We have adults that are participating in this, and you showed that at the beginning by them being able to change their voice and really live the part in a sense. And it's very concerning. It's really filled with lies and
It is
just false truths.
you know, something else that comes to mind here as I look at this picture, and I mean, not just this picture, but we have anime, and then we have furries, right? So this is the human dress up, claiming a furry identity, claiming they are whatever, a cat or a dog. But it's different than this. But there's so many different avenues for children to be absolutely overwhelmed and confused. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, this
I
is
just have I just have a few more of these slides of these anime to show,
yes.
cautionary reasons, and then I'll talk more about same subject. Okay, so it's another boy who finds himself transformed into a girl because a genie decided to be a little shit, I guess, and because his original wish was to be the manliest man in the world, and then this little genie that's granting his wish decides to be a little a miscreant or mischievous, and is like, I'll make you a girl instead. And so he's trying to figure out a way to reverse the spell.
Which there we go again. That concept introducing I call
Yeah.
a spell, and
This is a story where the boy in question goes to sleep as himself, then wakes up as a girl. And I have no idea how to pronounce this. I want to pronounce this bagel, but it's not pronounced bagel, it's pronounced a different way. A type of woman with a youthful face, sorry, and a curvy body.
there we go. By the way, again, I want parents and others to understand. Look at that combination. Predators will do that. They will make the face younger and more innocent while having an adult body.
And this one is just this character cross-dressing to go into an all-girls school to retrieve a power that's in there, that's part of the story. We need to get this power that's in this all-girls school, protected in this all-girls school so we can continue the story.
There you go. And getting power, that's an occultic theme as well.
Yeah, again to the occult.
So in this case, it's just cross-dressing. He's not swapping bodies and his body's not changing at all. And so it's another boy transforming into a girl. Whoops. Okay. So this person used to be a king in this story. Upon his death, he is granted a wish by a goddess and is reborn as a girl with the goal of mastering the sword. Hang on, he technically wanted that when he's still a man. I wonder why it was so important for him to be a girl in order to be a master swordsman.
There you go. And again, not to harp on it, but reborn. So
Yes.
wish by a goddess and reborn. So again, mystical. These are all occult kind of themes.
or in reference to their belief in reincarnation.
There you go, which is a spiritual concept.
Yeah.
This is the last one. This deals with a science fiction transformation, and apparently it was all the fault of his little sister. Neat. Okay, they actually use the term neat and otaku. So a NEET is not in education, employment, or training. That's an acronym. Referring to people who are not currently engaged in any of those three activities and not pursuing further education, employment, or participating in job training.
Otherwise known as failure to launch adults.
I was going to say, yeah, the failure to launch.
These are adults that are playing video games instead of going out and getting a job.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's the word otaku. A young person in Japan who is obsessed with computers or aspects of popular culture to the detriment of their social life.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so that was the last one. Stop sharing. Okay.
Charise, I'm aware of the time. My apologies. Here I kept jumping in, but there's so much. But I know we've been about an hour and a half. Would you be willing to come back for part 2? Could we do a part 2 with this?
I'll see if I can do that. Yeah.
Why don't we do that so that we can certainly not only advertise ahead of time, but make sure that the audience can stay with us, because you are just now getting into it. But what an important thing that you've helped us. Helped us understand the background of anime, that it comes out of the Orient, out of Japanese culture, and it has transitioned, pardon the pun, to be used by those pushing the grand lie of trans to target young people and to feminize
it
these.
Shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because that's not what it's meant for.
That's right. It's been co-opted.
But it's been twisted into that, and so it's totally different. We're in total different direction today than I had anticipated, because this went into the whole transitioning issue and swapping bodies, and then the whole religious and I would say the occult thing, which I didn't even realize that was involved in this. So we really haven't got in. I haven't seen the sexualized anime bodies, which I have seen in one of my own studies. So that'll be interesting for the next time, because I think as you go forward, it's going to be a lot more things. So it'll be good. Yes, and I have to go in a little while. So
they're going, Charise. That way we can honor the amount of information you have. So we can pick up part 2 kind of right here and allow you to just continue to educate us and all good people on this.
Yeah, the fact that somebody put all this together, and this is 99 pages. I'm not going to go over 99 pages even in part 2. Just the fact that somebody put this together and is listing all these anime to help people to help boys transition. That's just disgusting. What makes them think that this was a good idea? It's a terrible idea.
Unless you're a predator, and then it's a wonderful idea, because then the kids will groom themselves.
Yes.
It's like suggesting a woman go see 50 Shades of Grey. Only a guy's going to benefit from that.
Unless you're the DSM-5 who monetize the whole works of everything, and those guys at the top are capitalizing every single day from this, and that's where the real deviance is. And someday when we get to Montreal and different places where those guys live, I hope that they meet their maker real soon.
Or unless Alberta achieves independence.
Sure. Manitoba too, right there with you.
Charise, thank you so much. We'll we'll just put it on hold right there until part 2. I encourage all parents to go on, or anybody, to look up Transmaxing Manifesto. Read it line item by line item. As Charise, you just said, there's 99 pages, but it gives those suggested links. You can look up the programs yourself as a parent and look at what is being suggested to our young people, especially to boys these days.
There are literal links in the document, like they're all in blue and you can click on them, but there's not necessarily links to the anime themselves. I had to look them up.
You go look it up. So, Charise, you're a wealth of information about this, so thank you for being willing to educate us, and we look forward to part 2.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. It's fantastic. This has been an eye opener for John and Dr. Ann and myself. Like we've never experienced. They usually bring a guest on and they're the ones doing the talking and they're the ones who are educating some of our guests along the way. But today that script was flipped, and I'm glad that it was, because everything that you've been able to bring to the table is something that I, as a dad, have been concerned about for many, many years as I've watched this anime and Funatari and all this other stuff transition into something that's become so deviant and so concerning when it gets access, it gains access to parental time where these kids should be spending time with their parents and their families. And instead, they're sitting in their bedrooms, hibernating on their beds, watching this crap. And I can only pray that that going forward, we actually have a common sense about society and humanity that takes us to a place that says no more. And we've had enough, and our kids have suffered enough, and that this is flat out 100% enough. Thank you very much for being here. We look forward to part 2 with you, Charise. We couldn't have done it without you, guaranteed. We don't know all this, but we sure are learning from you, and thank you again for being here. John, Dr. Ann, till next time, take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.